Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. Really excited for this video as we have danger right now in Los Angeles. The Clippers are playing horrendously, and you guys know I was actually fairly high on the trade. I thought it made sense for both sides. I loved what the Sixers were able to do in terms of their long-term flexibility, getting off of James Harden when they did, getting the assets for them that they did. If you guys go back to my live stream, I loved that deal for them. I thought they did a very good job. I think they're the sleeping giant right now in the NBA. They've set themselves up very, very well. But I also did like it for the Clippers based on the players that they had to give up, based on their roster construction. I thought, look, this is going to set them up for some real success, although there's a few issues, and by a few I mean a lot. And one of them is Ivica Zubac, who I thought was going to kind of take off in a big way. With this trade, completely wrong. I was completely wrong there. Zubac is not going to work in Los Angeles, especially with the way that they're trying to run things, the offense that they're trying to use. Ty Lue does not know what he's doing right now, coaching James Harden. And listen, I believe James Harden was right. He is the system, but right now the system that they're trying to run through him isn't working because they don't have the proper spacing and they don't have the proper big man to play with him, which has been something we've seen as a flaw in the past. We saw it with Dwight Howard in Houston, how those two guys never lived up to potential that they could have had together as both great individual talents. Realistically, James Harden fits best with one kind of big, and we're going to talk about that in this video. How do they get that style of player? Can Zubac be that guy? And really, what are some of the flaws within this team inherently? We're going to talk about all of that and more. So let's get into it here. Let's start with some of their games that they've played so far, looking at some of their turnovers specifically, and some of the big flaws on the team. So let's jump into it now with our very first play, and it's a play against the Brooklyn Nets the other night. Harden, of course, Zubac trying to set him up to his left hand, does so, and we see actually James Harden tries to fit a pocket pass in front of Day'Ron Sharpe, and there's a couple of issues. So I like that the Clippers are trying to set up Harden to his left hand. I think that is a smart thing. Harden much better going to his left than his right. That's pretty standard for most NBA players. They're better going to their dominant hand. Mike Conley is one of the few examples who isn't. But then there's a couple of issues as I go frame by frame here. Zubac getting downhill. First of all, he's not getting wide enough. In fact, he's actually about arm's length away from James Harden, which means this is first of all going to be a very tough pass for Harden to fit in. And I've seen him fit this pass in before many times, but there's other few flaws, especially with the way that Ty Lue's coaching this and the spacing that he wants his guys to kind of run this action with. They're trying to, let's go back to the start of the play, they're trying to leave the entire top of the floor open for Harden. You see, no one is above the break besides Harden and Zubac, and the entire intention of this play is to get both Zubac and Harden downhill below the break. So this is where things are very, very complicated. Where's your spacing that you're going to work with? They've actually flattened out their offense, and it doesn't really make any sense as to why. As we get down here, right before Harden's about to throw the pass, you actually see Norm Powell is in the dunker spot. I don't understand the intention there. I don't really know why he's there. But this is not just a one-time thing. This is what the Clippers are trying to do out of high pick and roll right now. And you might wonder why their offensive efficiency rating, everything is so terrible. Well, this is a big reason why. They've got one player above the break right now. Is just because Paul George lifted up on the action, and that's just a natural basketball thing to do, and it's not really even what you'd want. You kind of want the corners occupied. It just doesn't make sense to have Norm Powell there. And with Zubac specifically, if you have George lifting like that, the one benefit of lifting is you're opening the backside of the rim. Zubac is too slow of a roller. He doesn't get downhill fast enough, and this is one of the things I overlooked when I analyzed the trade. Zubac's lack of athleticism, that's very inherent when you watch him play, but it's a real flaw here with the way that this team works because Harden plays pretty patiently in the pick and roll, but part of what works with that is usually the big man getting downhill puts the tag guy, in this case Day'Ron Sharpe, in a real bind trying to cover this. Doesn't work here, and you see Zubac actually doesn't get downhill, where if he gets past Day'Ron Sharpe here in this example, it's probably a lob dunk or even a nutmeg, which we've seen Harden throw dozens of nutmegs throughout his career. Instead, he tries to fit a horizontal pocket pass. It gets deflected, goes behind Zubac, and now the Nets are out and running in transition, which is, again, part of the reason that the Clippers are not working right now. Let's get into our second clip here. Here we got Norm Powell setting a screen. He actually rolls out of here at this spot, which is okay. And then Zubac comes up to set it, fakes it towards his left, snakes it back to his right, not a big deal. And again, this is where the Zubac issue is very, very evident. Zubac's kind of short rolls. This is something Harden's gotten a lot better at in his career, passing on short rolls, specifically in his time in Philly. Really, him and Embiid were so deadly in this game, in this version of basketball, because Embiid was such a talent out of the middle of the floor. Zubac is not. See, Zubac catches it, and instantly, no dribble, no anything, decides he's passing this basketball. Tries to fit it over the top. Mikal Bridges gets an easy steal, which leads to an easy Dennis Smith Jr. dunk on the other end. Again, if we go back and look at their spacing on this, there's a few flaws again. Look, this is, again, what I was saying. This is their intention here. You have literally Terrence Mann and Paul George holding hands over in the corner because this is what Ty Lue wants. Again, this is not just a one-possession thing. This is their pick-and-roll basketball look right now. Doesn't make sense. There is no reason at all to have the left slot empty. I don't understand the purpose of that, especially when you don't have a backside rim presence guy. It's not like you're going to throw a lob up to Terrence Mann. He's not giving you anything other than just putting a tag defender low. Trendon Watford you see down there in this situation. And Mikal Bridges, teams are not scared of blitzing Zubac. He's not a good enough passer. He doesn't have good enough hands to burn you in these areas. And again, the Nets get an easy dunk. Looking at our next example, Zubac again trying to set a screen. Harden rejects the screen, and Zubac just kind of stands. And again, look at the spacing of the Clippers here. They're all below the break. And they wonder why the entire paint is congested. There's no room to go anywhere. This is just not going to work. Their offense is abysmal right now. And I'm a big believer in James Harden. This is not Harden's fault. This is not Paul George's fault. This is not Kawhi Leonard's fault. The team is just spaced horrendously. This is like 1990s version of spacing here. I don't understand the intention at all with any of this type of spacing. They have guys who can shoot, like Paul George, Norm Powell. On the floor, they can shoot. Even Russell Westbrook, if you have him playing out of the slot, he's athletic enough and aggressive enough to attack even small closeouts. You need to space better than this, and this is one of the biggest issues, plus the fact that Zubac is literally a net negative anywhere on the floor that isn't a layup. Zubac at 14 feet is not a threat. Harden gets pushed into a turnover, and again, the Nets are out and running in transition, finishing with an easy layup and one on the other end of the floor. Then here's an example. This is not even high pick and roll, but let's just look at the Clippers spacing here. They're going 1-4. This is an end of shot clock isolation type of situation. Typically, now of course the Clippers are running that with 17 seconds on the shot clock. God knows why. Ty Lue, who I do believe is historically a very, very, very good coach, he doesn't know what he's doing right now. He doesn't know how to implement James Harden. There's no understanding, recollection of anything Harden's done in his career clearly, because this is not good NBA basketball. It's honestly at a point where I wish Mike D'Antoni was the coach of the Clippers, and I'm not a Mike D'Antoni guy. This is just not good. Look, the defense is flattened out again. It just writes itself. Length and size is going to be such a problem for the Clippers here. Mikal Bridges makes an excellent play on the ball. I don't even think this is a terrible decision by Paul George. Mikal just makes a great play. Harden's open on that in the corner, but again, Zubac's being dunker spot doesn't do you anything for you. There's no space to operate. There's no room for him to be a real threat, and the team's just not going to be that good if this is what their spacing looks like, and if this is how little teams respect Ivica Zubac anywhere outside of the paint, outside of the restricted area more specifically, which is one of the big problems. Now let's go to their matchup with the Memphis Grizzlies, and here's an example in transition. Harden fits a pass into Zubac, who can't really gather it, kind of turns advantage into nothing, and then from there he tries to get off the ball because he doesn't really feel comfortable with the ball and just throws a really bad turnover. This is part of why Zubac isn't going to work now with the Clippers, and I was wrong, completely wrong about I thought how he was going to fit. I thought he was going to be better. I thought that Harden was going to be able to create a lot of stuff for him, advantage. I think that's still the truth. Harden does create a lot of advantage for him. Zubac just isn't good enough to take advantage of any of that. And I think because of that, there's going to be some real issues still with their structure of their offense. They've tried Moussa Diabate for games. That hasn't worked either. Moussa Diabate is not a good NBA level player. I could have told you that coming into the season. And Zoo's got stone hands. Zubac, in my opinion right now, I would say he can't play on the team. And he can't fit. And their flat spacing is absolutely terrible. It just is. Let's look at this example. Harden here, not Harden. Zubac setting another screen here for Paul George. George kind of attacks downhill. Look at the spacing again. Kawhi Leonard's in the dunker spot. We got two corner occupiers. And because of that, the Grizzlies are all kind of already loaded in. And people are going to blame Paul George for this. Bismack gets a really nice strip on the ball, makes a really nice play, gets the Grizzlies out and running again, which this is another issue we'll talk about here in a second. But first of all, look at Zubac. I mean, multiple seconds after setting the screen, Paul George is already at the nail, and Zubac isn't even inside the three-point line. Like, first of all, if Zoo's going to be your only guy above the break, that's going to be a problem for your offense. Secondly, like, if he's supposed to be rolling, I mean, oh my gosh, he's got to get downhill way faster. We highlighted that earlier. But then the other issue here is as soon as this turnover happens, let's look at the court spacing here. Everybody is below the break, which you might say, yeah, you've already harped on that. Think about your transition defense. Who is supposed to get back here? Luke Kennard is already running with a head of steam forward. Now, Luke Kennard's not the most athletic guy, but when we let this clip play out, who's supposed to get back? You've got two guys running from the corner. You're hoping that, Terrence Mann or James Harden get a chase down block, something that neither of them do ever. This is just not going to work. Ty Lue is putting his team in a terrible situation. You know, I've been seeing people on Twitter saying, oh, you got to fire Ty Lue. I think that kind of thinking is wrong. You shouldn't just fire a coach all of a sudden, especially a good one. But it's very, very clear Ty Lue's got to fix this, because I'm going to be honest, I usually don't swear on here. His offense is complete bullshit right now. And he's setting up James Harden for failure. And you see people's backlash on social media saying, oh my gosh, Harden's washed, Harden's this. I don't think any of the players are washed. I think that all the players could theoretically work together. There's no smart system right now in place to set any of them up to succeed in any sense of the word. So because of that, they're just not going to find success. Quite frankly, pretty clear, concise, and cut, dry, like they're not going to be good. And a big reason for that is what Ty Lue is currently doing with the X's and O's. Let's look at their game against Dallas. Zubac again setting a high screen here for Kawhi. The two of them have actually had a pretty good two-man game historically. But look again at the spacing. Russ is off the break, and then Harden deep corner, Paul George deep corner. And Zubac just kind of waltzes down. And with where their spacing is, look at Derrick Jones. Derrick Jones Jr., who actually gets the steal, is playing way off of George because, first of all, George has no mobility. George is so deep into the corner, which is, again, what Ty Lue wants him to do. I mean, look at how packed this is. It's basically a 2-3 zone with the way that the Clippers are aligned. This is just not good offense at all, to the point where Derek Lively covering Kawhi in space, you're getting double pinches on both sides from Doncic and Derrick Jones Jr., and there's just not room for Kawhi Leonard to do anything. He tries splitting that double, and he gets ripped. And again, it's not because Kawhi Leonard's all of a sudden bad. It has nothing to do with Kawhi Leonard being washed. It just literally has to do with their offensive spacing. And right now, it's really the worst. And again, look, this is all transition defense. They aren't guarding anyone in transition because they're all so low. I mean, it's literally just basic knowledge of, hey, if we put our guys further away from the hoop we're guarding, the chances of them being able to get back before the other team isn't very high. It doesn't make any sense. You see so many teams work around the hashes and off the point, and the Clippers just aren't doing that. None of their players are around the point. None of their players are around the hashes, and their entire offense is based on trying to get to the rim, and it just feels like a slugfest right now, and it feels like they're running through mud because that's what Ty Lue has set them up to do. Let's look at our next example against the Dallas Mavericks here. Harden, this is probably one of their better examples. Has a little bit more space to operate with. Would you notice that? Paul George is standing around the hash. Not surprising here. They kind of free flow into offense here early on in transition. That's the only reason this is correct. Harden's been really slowing their team down too, which that's his own problem. Harden, historically has done that, but he's historically been good enough to get away with it. Right now, with their offensive spacing, it's not good enough to get away with it anymore. But then this is really the issue. So their spacing's better. Look at how uncongested the paint is. Bones Highland's in the left corner. Harden's got some options here. Decides to draw in Derek Lively. And with where Doncic is, Luka's actually really, really lazy on this rep. You've got Zubac in layup territory. If he catches this ball, it's a layup. But Zubac has stone hands. This becomes a turnover. Mavericks go the other way. James Harden looks bad. That goes in the stat sheet as a James Harden turnover, even though Zubac just can't catch the ball. Harden generated advantage. No basket made. Let's go into the game against the Denver Nuggets, which is right before I'm recording this video. I'm recording this video right now, 12:15 in the morning, right after their loss to the Denver Nuggets. They have yet to win a game with James Harden, and a lot of the issues and structure is why. Here's Russell Westbrook trying to attack downhill, And if you notice again, there is just no at all concern about Ivica Zubac. Notice their team is extremely flattened out. You've got PJ Tucker running the baseline, Kawhi Leonard on the baseline. You've got Paul George in a corner. You've got Zubac at the nail for some reason doing absolutely nothing. And Russell Westbrook's inside the three-point line. You have 2 total guys outside the arc. And even then they're below the break. So this is just, again, poor spacing. I don't want to harp on it too much. You guys probably get the point by now. But it's absolutely terrible. You're forcing guys into tough shots, trying to make passes. Zubac doesn't have the hands to catch them most of the time. He doesn't have the athleticism to be a backside rim pressure, lob threat. There's just nothing good going on. And if you look at every single defense, they're almost forming a wall, and it's not intentional. Teams are not intentionally forming a wall against the Clippers like they do against Giannis. It's just the spacing is aligning for that. Like, Gordon's in great help side positioning. Jokic is exactly where he's supposed to be covering Zoo. You've got a good cutoff on ball against Russell Westbrook, and MPJ is promptly denying corner to Kawhi Leonard. This is really smart defensive structure and spacing. This is exactly how you would want it coached if you were doing shell drill activities. The issue here is the Clippers just are playing into everyone's shell right now. They're just saying, oh yeah, we'll try and get to these spots and this should open things up. They're taking way too much of the corner approach of, oh, we got to have the corners occupied. No, you don't. You don't. Some of the best basketball is empty corner pick and roll and usage. They need to run way more side pick and roll. There's so many more things that they could do. Let's look at this next example. Paul George tries to attack downhill. Again, they just turn it over. This one, a little bit better spacing example again here because you have a guy above the break. Notice that, Kawhi Leonard, probably open on this. But there's just too much pressure on Paul George because Jokic doesn't care about Zubac. Zubac off the baseline is offering you nothing. It just offers you nothing, which is why he really can't play. Our next clip, this is on the defensive end, and this is really interesting. Ty Lue knows Zubac can't play. He's tried Diabate, like I said. And in the fourth quarter, closing lineup against the Nuggets, against Jokic and Aaron Gordon, they played no center. They played Kawhi Leonard at center, Paul George at power forward. Here we got PG on Jokic, really good initial defense, and Norm Powell goes to blitz. Something I completely agree with right now. If you have Jokic posting up, they get him to pick up his dribble. This is excellent. Once he picks up his dribble, Norm Powell should probably escape out of there. It doesn't make sense to continue pressuring him. They get a kick out. KCP looks to swing it, but watch Terrence Mann on the backside here. If you're going to blitz and double, which is what they needed to do here, your rotations have to be essentially perfect when you're this undersized, and that's the issue. They get a really nice backside 2-on-1 situation. Gordon and Jackson, Mann chooses wrong, gets looked off, and KCP makes a nice pass for an Aaron Gordon dunk and one. Let's get to our next example here. We got Jokic again attacking. KCP gets the ball, and they feed Jokic one-on-one down with Paul George, and he's just too little. This is an issue. You can't play this small ball against Nikola Jokic. Against most teams historically, you can. Even when the Rockets were doing it 4 or 5 years ago, I thought, hey, look, there's some actual usage to that. It's not going to work against the Denver Nuggets. I'm telling you right now, this is not the team to run small ball against. Here we go. We got now Mann on Jokic. Let's see what they do. They double, and they put James Harden in a real bind. He's got to guard the corner and the low man because, again, they doubled. They're outnumbered, and it leads to a tip dunk. Next example, we've got now Jokic going back to the post on Paul George. Let's watch what they do here again. Here comes the double from Norm Powell. But this time, Jokic, being the basketball savant he knows it's coming, spins baseline on George and gets the easy layup because there's literally no rim protection. And again, this isn't I'm blaming Ty Lue for all of this. I mean, some of their decisions are smart here, but they don't have rim protection. And it's not like playing Zubac gives you that either. Zubac is not a good rim protector. Zubac is like the 26th best center in the NBA. And you can't win with that against a Nikola Jokic to begin with, especially when there's so many offensive flaws. And he doesn't bring you a ton on defense either in terms of being a great rim protector or anchor of a defense. I think he's a good box out guy. I think he's strong, good at the point of attack in post-ups. Those are some really important things. Zubac would be a fantastic backup big. That's not what they're asking him to do, and it's mucking up the rest of their offense, and their defense can't rely on him either. So the best place to start is with the Clippers' trade assets. Currently, what they have to trade is a 2030 first-round pick unprotected. Now, I know it doesn't say their 2029 first in here. That's actually a swap with Philly. So you have to remember, look, they have some flexibility here. Not the Stepien rule is not stopping them from trading 2030. They traded their 2028 first unprotected to the 76ers, which means they still have their 31st to trade if they want to kind of bet on this team more, which is a big question. The first team I would call if I were them is the Atlanta Hawks. And Clint Capella made a ton of money in his career playing with James Harden. He's the exact type of big they need. Much better rim protector, a lot more athletic, gets downhill quicker, a little bit better hands. Still not a post-up threat. They don't need another guy to go to in half-court offense in terms of, hey, feed him the ball, let him go get a basket. They need a guy who's kind of an around player. Listen, he grabs 11 rebounds a game, 12 points a night, and he does it predominantly without the ball. We know how good Trae Young and Clint Capella have been. You might be saying, well, why would the Hawks be willing to give him up? It's because they have this awesome guy right here. Onyeka Okongwu is a fantastic young player. I think he is going to be the future starting center of the Atlanta Hawks. I think he's a really, really, really talented young kid who can defend out in space and in drop. He can protect the rim. I think he's just flat out a very good player. Onyeka Okongwu is going to be a good NBA player for a long time, which means maybe the Hawks, for the right price, would be willing to get something done. So now you can ask yourself, do you want to give up something like Norm Powell, or is it like Zubac plus salary, right? And I think one of the big losses for them is Mason Plumlee. If Mason Plumlee was healthy and around right now, obviously just sustained an injury, definitely a big blow for them. He would give them a lot of that playmaking, short roll, give him the ball around the nail, and he can make some of those decisions. The unfortunate thing is they don't have him right now. So how do you go about crafting some type of trade for Clint Capella? It really turns into Norm Powell plus a pick, or Zubac, which I think is something they should explore. And for the Hawks, who are still trying to be competitive, Zubac becomes your backup center. You have a little bit of insurance in case Okongwu doesn't play as great as you want him to right away, but I still think it makes a good deal of sense. And then some young players in there. Maybe a Kobe Brown who has been lighting up the G League a little bit. You throw him in there. Maybe Bones Highland becomes a part of this deal, and BJ Boston. Something like this where, again, you're selling out way more depth. Definitely a tough situation, and that 2030 first rounder goes out the door to Atlanta as well. Like I said, the Stepien rule here, Fanspo has this wrong. They don't have their stuff updated. Don't worry about that. For the financial perspective of things, that is actually correct. We do need to add a little bit more salary in because of the 110% rule, part of the new CBA. So we'll throw in, Amir Coffey probably has to go into this deal as well. The money there significantly closer. And again, it's going to say failed because of the Stepien rule, but I'm telling you that's not the actual case. Here's the deal. Capella for Zubac, Coffey, Brown, Highland, Boston, and 2031st. This is an overpay for Clint Capella. It 100% is. This is like oh my gosh, the Clippers hit the panic button, think this isn't going to work at all with Zubac. They've got to get off of him. And they get an actual true role guy in Capella who is much, much better, puts real backside rim pressure on. That's the first team I would call. I do think there's another couple of teams I would call. I think Indiana is a really fascinating option for them, for a guy who doesn't really play that much, and that is Isaiah Jackson, who, I know Pacers fans do like Ijax. I love Ijax. I think this kid is a really, really good player if you have the right pieces around him. And what I would do is load up the seconds, 3 second-round picks, and, your pick of a young guy. Do you guys want Kobe Brown? I think he could be a really nice fit in Indiana. He shoots the ball really, really well. Something like this where, we have to cut $41,000, of course, because the Clippers are literally in cap hell because of the CBA, which is fine. I mean, we'll figure out a way to get it there. We'll throw in BJ Boston. I'm sure the Pacers would like that. And this, again, probably an overpay, but this is like, hey, if you're actually panicking and freaking out, someone who protects the rim, and Isaiah Jackson, who can catch lobs, is super athletic downhill. This is the type of player you actually need on your roster if you're the Clippers. Someone who fits next to James Harden. Isaiah Jackson 100% does. And if you want to employ him off the baseline, he can do that because he's big, lengthy, and athletic. All of the things Zubac really isn't in terms of the height and vertical components of basketball. Zubac is wide, takes up space, good screen setter, does some really good things for you. It's just not the things that fit really, really well with James Harden. And because of that, it's just not going to work. It just isn't. I was hopeful. I thought Zubac was going to kind of step into a bigger role and kind of fill in some shoes that, we hadn't seen him do so far. He's just not that guy, to be honest. I've seen enough through 4 games. I do think if they fix the spacing, he would look a little bit better. But even then, it's just, I don't believe it'll be good. Funny enough, Isaiah Hartenstein would be a fantastic fit back into this team. Hartenstein with his little push shot, right around 8 to 10 feet. Clippers fans know exactly what I'm talking about. They've watched him play. He would be a great get for them, but I don't think the Knicks would be really willing to give him up. I guess another question is Jarrett Allen attainable? And is that something that you could get done? Like Jarrett Allen for, something along the lines of Norm Powell plus some other pieces, right? Kobe Brown, BJ Boston. You throw in any of the young guys that they want. You throw in all of the second rounders. You throw in the first. Is this, you completely empty the cupboard, but is this something, again, don't listen to the Stepien rule. Fanspo has it wrong. Obviously the hard cap here too. You have to figure out the money here. These are kind of just rough ideas. I haven't planned these in advance. I'm literally doing these live on the fly because the game just finished and I can't take what's going on with the Clippers right now. So you have to make the money work, of course. Move some of the pieces around a little bit, like cut a little bit of salary somewhere, or maybe the Cavs have to throw another guy back into the deal to get it done. Like maybe something small like Sam Merrill, or maybe like Tristan Thompson or something, right? Damian Jones. Let's just throw Sam Merrill in here just to show, look, this trade could theoretically work if you get the pieces right, ignoring the Stepien rule. Again, that's wrong right now on Fanspo. Something like this is what could maybe fix the Clippers right now. I'm not super optimistic on it. The Clippers are not a good team currently at all. So there's a lot of things they'd have to figure out. And it's really important that they do, because if you look at Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, James Harden, they're all technically expiring contracts. Kawhi and PG are, both player options that they can opt out of, likely will if things do not get better. James Harden is a free agent after opting into his player option last summer. They could realistically lose everybody with almost no picks. Getting someone like a Jarrett Allen could solve everything. Jarrett Allen, Clint Capella, Isaiah Jackson for the cheap maybe. They have to go do something. They have to get a different big man there, a better screen and roll guy, someone who's a little bit more of a vertical threat, downhill threat. That's what they need. You guys saw it in the clips. There are some real inherent flaws with their spacing and with their center play right now. And they've got a lot of work to do in order to fix some of these issues. But I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I had a lot of fun recording it, talking about the Clippers' flaws. I think it's a really fascinating case study right now, and how if you put together all these stars but have the wrong scheme, they don't look like star players anymore. And that's exactly what we're seeing with the Los Angeles Clippers. The names on the roster don't get you wins. The scheme, X's and O's, execution do. And right now, none of it's working, and it's because they have the wrong baseline strategy. And once they fix it, they'll be good. I really do believe that still. And maybe a roster change around Zubac makes some sense as well in that category of kind of mastering your execution and picking the best scheme for Harden. But right now they don't have that. And it's going to take a little while to get there for them. We'll see if they make a move. My assumption is they're going to wait and see. And if they keep waiting and seeing, they might not win a game for a while. So there's a lot of pressure right now. The Clippers are kind of on the clock with their whole, trading for Kawhi Leonard, Paul George move. Obviously they signed Kawhi, but you know what I mean. Trading for Harden. I mean, this whole thing is a potential disaster right now. So they've got to figure it out quickly. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.